What's happening, fishing friends? Welcome to another episode. Today I'm going to share with you 4 lures that I think you should try before summer is over. As we move into fall, temperatures are going to drop, the days are getting shorter, and the bass are going to begin to feed. Now in the shad lakes, that means the bass are going to be following the shad back up into those creek channels, back up into the shallows. It's no different for the smaller lakes and ponds around here with bluegill. Those bass want to eat, they want to bulk up for winter. At the beginning of this cycle, this kind of summer to fall transition is an excellent time to capitalize on the topwater bites that are remaining, before that water gets too cold, and faster moving baits. Because as those water temperatures continue to plummet into late fall, those fish are going to get lethargic. You've really got to slow down your presentations, suspending jerk baits, slow dragging jigs, that kind of thing. But right now is prime time for moving. Now, the other nice part about the water temperatures cooling down is those bass can put on size, eat, and they can keep it on. Unlike the summer months where the water's so hot, their metabolism is so high, you catch a lot of skinny bass. That's why, as that water temperature cools down, those bass can eat, feed up, and keep that weight on. Good time to catch big fish. So enough talking, let's get into those 4 lures and the setup, starting with the Tekkel sprinkler frog. Yes, probably not a surprise to a lot of you. This is one of my favorite frogs out there. Now, this is great for beginners, or people that have fished for a long time, myself. It's a great lure because it's just cast and retrieve. There's no kind of crazy way to work it, no worrying about pops and walking it and all that. You just cast this out, reel it in. It's great because you can cover a lot of water, and that's going to be key as those water temperatures fall and those bass are moving around, chasing bait fish. Covering water is key. It's not like in the summer where it's super hot and you have fish butted right up against that wood and you've kind of got to be finessey or throw a big worm. Now they're actively feeding and actively looking for fish, so you got to cover water. Now you may say, why not a buzzbait? You can cover water with that. That's true, and you can choose that, but around here we have a lot of grassy lakes, and the good part about this is it's weedless. It's just like your regular hollow body frogs. You can see there the hooks are up on top, but you've got that ploppy tail action in back, so you're making commotion, but like the lakes around here that still have vegetation growing and kind of the scummy stuff up on top, you can fish the edges of that, or you can throw this in that and fish it just like a frog. Can't do that with a buzzbait. And also with this, if you're covering water and you come up to like a stump or a little bush or whatever, you can pause this bite too for a split second, kind of give it a pop, pause it, so you can kind of get the best of both worlds. It's like a floating buzzbait almost, a little bit more subtle version. Now again, this is a great lure for beginners, especially you bank anglers out there. One of our primary concerns is losing lures, right? Bank anglers tend to fish safe. They might not get as close to that wood or as close to that bush. They're afraid of getting hung up. Well, with this, you don't have to worry about that as much. Not a high percentage of getting this hung up and stuff. If you throw it over a log, it's weedless, be slow, and it should pop right over it. So great for beginners in that regard. Now, when we talk about colors of the sprinkler frog, generally I prefer a black. Black has been kind of my go-to the past couple years. Great all-around color, no matter the conditions, low light, sunny. It just makes a good outline, a good shadow for that fish to see. When you're bringing this over, they don't get a great look at it. So they just see that shadow, think it's a little bluegill or a frog or something, and nail it. So that's why I like black as my first choice. Now, if you notice, they really are targeting bluegill. Of course, a bluegill color is always a good pick. Of course, it's got a little chartreuse on there, to mimic that bluegill as well. I like that. Pike seem to like that color too, that kind of bright chartreuse. Great for pike. And as you just saw in my recent video, a white. Funny enough, the white with orange head, but you can see there the belly is primarily white, but a white color does well, especially if you have those shad lakes. Any sort of white color mimics shad really well, but I know a lot of people that swear by that white color, whether it's daylight or low light, some people just prefer that. So see what works best for your local lakes and ponds. I tend to go just to an all black. You can tell this thing has been beat up, tore up, the bottom of it's all ripped up. This guy's definitely seen better days, but bluegill, white, or black. Now as for the combo, starting with the reel, I like a 7-ish speed reel. This is that Revo X you've seen me use this year. It's a 6.6 to 1 retrieve. A 7-ish speed, in my opinion, is the best all around. So I would go with that. I would strongly recommend a reel with an aluminum frame. You can go all graphite, but frogging is truly one of the hardest things you'll do to your gear. So something with an aluminum frame will last you a lot better in the long run. I just said better twice, more better. For the rod, I like a 7 to 7.5 foot heavy. This is a 7'4" heavy, rated for lures up to 1.5 ounce. It's got a pretty soft tip, so this is again that Lew's speed stick you've seen me using. I've liked it. It's a $79 rod. It's done pretty darn well this year, so I'll have a review coming up on this soon. And then line, 65-pound braid. I like 65-pound for the added insurance. You could go with 50 if you want, but man, with the thick slop and stuff, trees, branches, that's what the heavy line is for, is when you get stuck in that. It's not for the fish. You can land fish on 8-pound braid. It's for all the stuff you're fishing around. So especially from the bank, I'd rather bump up a little bit more and have that insurance. All right, lure choice number 2 are soft plastic, kind of these paddle foot, paddle tail frogs. I know you're thinking, well, those are basically the same thing as the Tekkel Sprinker, right? Why would you choose that? Well, hear me out. Early fall, you're gonna have cold fronts, temperatures that are gonna vary up and down. One day might be nice, next day it might be 50. Well, these frogs are a great finesse moving topwater lure, as opposed to like the Choppo or the Whopper Plopper. That's a lot of commotion, a lot of noise. And sometimes you want that. Sometimes you want it to be loud and obnoxious, a really squeaky buzz bait, make those fish angry and hit it. But sometimes, when the conditions get kind of tough, you want to kind of downsize. And to me, I look at these as kind of a finesse topwater option. Now there's a number of brands and types out there. One that I was testing this year was that Culprit and Creta Frog. I really like that one. It's got short, stubby, stocky legs. They held on really well. It's got a good solid plop to it. It's got a good meaty body for those hooks to go in. I like that one. Of course, the top toed there, that's one you've seen me throw before. Another great little option. Or something even just a little bit different. That's a Marling Baits frog. I had the opportunity to go over and pour some of my own colors with those guys, Mr. Marling, Nick Rundle, and Nate. All 3 of those guys, awesome dudes at the bait cave. Poured my own color there. It kind of actually turned out to be a bullfrog color, which looks pretty cool. Now you'll see this lure in action soon. I'm not going to spoil the video, but I caught a really good fish with it. The rod I was actually using, well, it's no longer in use, and you'll find out why, but these frogs, great. So again, these type of frogs do share a lot of the same characteristics as the Sprinker, but it's weedless. Again, huge in the lakes that have grass in them. If you don't have a lake with grass, you could be throwing a popper or a topwater walking bait to mimic bait fish, but around grass, you just can't use those treble hook lures. It's a pain, you're clearing gunk off every other cast. So something like this is big, and this is different. I barely ever see guys around here throwing a soft plastic, ploppy foot frog like this, ever. Everybody around here is throwing the regular hollow body frog, and don't get me wrong, I love those, but when you want some commotion, when those fish are chasing and they're actively looking for stuff, looking up to see something kind of running and scurrying away, a moving frog like this is awesome. Again, colors, I like a dark color as my color of choice. I forget what color this was in the Incredi Frog, but it's like a green pumpkin up top, and the bottom is like a June bug color. Really like that one. Or, of course, you can try to mimic a frog or bluegill. So I think that chartreuse color does a great job of both, whether it's looking like a bullfrog, looking like some sort of bluegill up top, some sort of naturalist greenish color with some chartreuse. And if you had just like a regular green pumpkin, you could take some Spike It or a Spike It marker and color some of that on there to add some chartreuse. And of course, if you have a shad lake, they have white in these as well. So white, always a good choice. Flipping it around docks, wood, brush, whatever, wherever those shad are at, white's a good pick. All right, as for the combo, again, a 7-inch speed reel. This happens to be the Lew's Tournament MP. That's in a 6/8 gear ratio. Lew's also has the 7/5-to-1, so somewhere around in there. I like that 7-inch speed. Again, I would highly recommend an aluminum frame, bringing those fish through, hard hook sets. It's gonna last you better in the long run. Now hooks, you're gonna match the hook to the size of the frog. I like a very lightly weighted belly hook because something like this on this Incredi Frog, this is a weightless hook. You see there's no weight on the bottom, and it does have a tendency sometimes to go belly up, as opposed to, you can get the exact same hooks that have a little 1/8 ounce lead weight on it, still the double frog hooks. I prefer those, just a tiny, tiny bit of weight to make sure it always rolls and goes belly down as it's going through the water. Same thing if you're running a single hook. This is a 4/0, I think a 1/4 ounce, which is a little bit heavy. Just have to reel a little bit faster to start with. 1/8 is my preference there. So a little tiny tiny weight on the keel weighted, belly weighted hook helps to keep that frog belly down. As for the rod, again, you're gonna match it with the cover, 7 to 7.5 foot, medium heavy. If you're fishing this mainly around open water, I tend to default to a heavy power rod. This is an old Loomis rod. This is a heavy, it's only rated up to 3/4 of an ounce, which usually that's gonna be a medium heavy rod. So it's kind of hard. You've gotta pick the rod as to what you like. I like something with a good backbone, but a good soft tip so you can load that lure. It's not a heavy lure at all. Just a little soft plastic with a 1/8 ounce weighted hook. Doesn't weigh much at all. So if you've got a pool cue that doesn't have any bend in the tip, it's gonna be hard to cast. You're gonna cast straight down towards the water a lot. So you want something with a little bit of tip so you can load that and cast it out. It's gonna make it a lot easier on you. Okay, moving on to lure number 3. I'm going with a weighted Wacky rig. A lot of those shallow water bass have really been beat up through the summer. Guys beating the banks, crankbaits, chatterbaits, spinnerbaits, whatever it is they're throwing at them. They've seen a lot of stuff. And also moving into the fall, again, you've got a lot of fronts, so fish can get a little finicky. I believe that's where a little finesse lure like this really shines. And when I'm using a weighted wacky rig, there's a couple that I really like. You know, of course, you could use the regular style Senko, you know, the Gary Yamamoto Senko, Yum Dinger, just that kind of standard type. But two of my absolute favorites. Number one, no surprise at all, I'm sure, the Reaction Innovations Pocket Rocket. Now, I like the larger 5.5 inch on bigger lakes when you know you have bigger fish. If you're fishing real small lakes, small ponds, they make a 4.5 inch that's great as well. Highly underrated. I don't see people using these very much, but the Pocket Rocket is probably my favorite stick bait out there. Now, specifically for the weighted wacky, did I just say wacky? I like the 4.75 inch Grande Bass rattlesnakes. These float so I don't use them weightless, you know, like I would a regular stick bait. But weighted, these things are awesome. They've got ribs on them, as you can see. So they displace a lot of water. And the actual body of it, this all isn't the body. The body is in there in the middle. So it's got a thin body with a bunch of different ribs on the outside. When you put this on a weighted wacky hook, it really accentuates Sean Connery, accentuates that wiggle on the fall. So it's just a totally different look. You know, some sort of ringed bait like this. Trying to think, Lake Fork has like a version of this. There's others out there now, I'm sure, but some sort of ringed bait like this, a ring fry type bait, is a really cool different look that you don't see people throwing. And again, I'm a believer that if you can throw something a little different, I think it does make a difference on those really high pressure, you know, little lakes and ponds. Now, a quick tip for all you beginners out there, invest in a little wacky tool. This is a wacky O-ring tool. Great little tool. So instead of taking this hook and putting it straight through the soft plastic, you catch maybe one fish, oftentimes that rips out and you've lost your stick bait. If you're like me, I don't have sponsors giving me hundreds and thousands of soft plastics, so you want to make those last as long as you can. That's where these O-rings come into play. Now, I use the size number 9. You can see there it says size number 9. That's a little bit smaller size. They make larger and smaller versions of these, so when you're getting it, look for the smaller version. They fit a little bit tighter. You won't lose them as easy off the bait. And the way I rig it, I take 2 of those O-rings, so I pull 2 off, put them on the bait, and cross them over each other. I take my hook and take it under that X. That way it stays on there a lot longer, lasts a lot better. You can see there are 2 of them crossed over there. It also helps keep that hook perpendicular to the lure. You can see how it's sticking out there. Sticks out of the lure like that instead of being in line with it. If I just had one, it would be sticking like this. I feel like you get a little bit better hookup ratio with that hook being perpendicular to the lure like that. You can run just the one. I know guys that do that. Play with it, you know, when you run it, see what you have a little bit better hookup. I think running it this way, you get a little bit better. And those O-rings X'd over holds that bait on the hook a lot easier. For the Wacky Rig jig heads, I like a 1/16 ounce as my do-it-all. You can bump up to 1/8 if you're fishing a little bit deeper, or if there's a little bit of current. 1/8 is good, but you can go BMC. This happens to be like a Bass Pro Shops version. There's a bunch of them out there. Find what works best for you. As far as the setup, I like a 3000 size reel. That bigger spool allows you to bring in more line, so it actually makes it a faster retrieve, as opposed to if you were using like a little 1000 size reel, doesn't bring in line as quick. So I personally like a 3000 size reel. 10 to 15 pound braid to an 8 to 10 pound fluorocarbon leader. And then again, a 7 to 7.5 foot medium power spinning rod. Again, they're already going to be a little bit softer than a comparable casting rod. So with those light wire hooks, you don't want to go super heavy and bend that out. So you need a good reel that's got a good drag on it. You want a rod that's kind of soft. You don't want to have a super duper heavy power stiff rod with this with a light power hook. All right, last but not least, lure number 4. This is kind of a two-parter. The lure itself is the Chatterbait, specifically the Chatterbait Custom. Now, these are a Tackle Warehouse exclusive, and in my opinion, the best bang for the buck when it comes to chatterbaits. Now, arguably, you know, the jackhammer, you see all the pros using it, and everybody's talking about it. Absolutely, it's a great lure. You know, it vibrates right off. That's the biggest thing to the jackhammer is as soon as you turn that handle just a little bit, it's vibrating. You know, that can be a thing with the custom, or even the originals. Sometimes it doesn't go. You have to give your rod a quick pop before it starts vibrating. If that's the case, you can miss bites. You know, those fish want to see and hear that vibration right away. If you throw it in nice and subtle, then you're jerking it all crazy like to get it to vibrate. Could make all the difference. So yes, the jackhammer is a better chatterbait all around, but chatterbaits are the #1 lure that I lose. I lose them more than anything else. So it's hard for me to justify paying, you know what, $16, $17 a jackhammer, you lose it in 2 casts. So get these on sale at Tackle Warehouse, and you're under $5 for a chatterbait. So these are nice because they have a little bit upgraded hook keeper. hook keeper. Soft plastic keeper is what I meant. A little bit different line tie that I like as opposed to the regular snap on the originals. And of course with the chatterbait, the blade is directly connected to the lure there. No sort of split rings or anything in between. It's got a super sharp but a little bit smaller mustad hook. So that's something to keep in mind if you want to run a real big soft plastic on this. The hooks on there are a little bit smaller compared to some of the others, but that's perfect because the second part of this bait that I specifically want to talk about is the Berkley power bait, the Deal. This is the smaller 3.5-inch lure. I think, yeah, Skeet Reese designed this one. I don't really hear anybody talking about this, and I think this is a sleeper chatterbait trailer. Now, of course, you all know probably my favorite chatterbait trailer out there, the Reaction Innovations Little Dipper, or Skinny Dipper, which is the bigger version. Absolutely amazing. Also right up there as one of my top 2 favorites is the Gary Yamamoto Zacco. Kind of a segmented fish looking thing here. A little bit different look than a paddle tail. But both of those I absolutely love. Now what's cool about the Deal is it's such a good chatterbait trailer because if you look at the little tails on this, the little fins and back, they're really thin. You know, they're not big, huge, fat tail looking things back here. They're cupped. So they do swim in the water, and you rig it vertically. So you can see it's the fish shape there. You rig that vertically. I'm going to throw that on the Chatterbait Custom that I have on the combo here. This is just a black and blue. I'll put this on quick. And that, Fishing Friends, is what you end up with. Super cool look on the back of a chatterbait. When it's going through the water, you know, some trailers can kind of work against the chatterbait. You've got to remember it's vibrating and kind of doing its own thing. So you want a trailer that works with it. These little tails, it doesn't take much to get them going. And like I said, they're cupped. So they kind of already flap on their own and going back and forth. It undulates and looks like a bluegill tail. I think it's an awesome little trailer. It's a good, compact, almost finesse version of a chatterbait. You see some people running real big, huge versions of it, but if you're in a lake that's pressured or in a lake that's got smaller bass, smaller fish, smaller bait fish to feed on, perfect way to kind of downsize and give it a real subtle, you know, trailer on it. Okay, as for the Chatterbait Combo, I know there's a lot of different views on this. Some guys like a rod with a little bit more moderate fast action, more bend to it, softer. That way when you cast that out and you get that bite, there's a little split-second delay before you're setting the hook. It allows them to get that chatterbait in their mouth. Some guys like, you know, just a regular, kind of like me, just a regular medium heavy. Nothing special to this rod at all. It's got a decent backbone to it, decently soft tip, kind of an all-around combo. This happens to be the Lew's Custom Pro Speed Stick, rated for lures up to 7/8. Great rod, great reel seat on it. I've really liked it. And then of course the reel, it's going to be upside down, but that's the Shimano SLX DC. Again, that's a 7.2 speed. I like the 7-ish speed all around. I've said that on all of them. That's my favorite all around. But you know, with the chatterbait, something like this, you could drop down to like a 6 speed, something with more resistance, you know, bigger spinner baits, chatterbaits, things that are harder to bring through the water. If you have a real high speed reel, you're gonna have to work a lot harder. There's not as much torque. So something like this, you can certainly bump down to a you know, a lower 6 speed. It's just going to be easier to pull through the water. Now around here in the Midwest, I like to run 15 to 17 pound fluorocarbon. I'm one of those guys that thinks line does matter. So if it's a little bit clearer water, I would rather just go with the fluorocarbon. Talk to somebody down in Florida fishing from a boat, they're probably using a 7.5 foot, maybe even longer rod for big long casting distance. Probably using 50, 65 pound braid and a heavy rod. So it really depends on where you're at, what you're fishing around. You know, a lot of the smaller lakes and ponds and stuff around here kind of have moderate grass and vegetation and such. So I'm running this next to the vegetation or just over the tops of it. Usually I can get away with a medium heavy. All right, fishing friends, those are the 4 lures that I recommend you try before summer's over and then falling in that awful winter stuff. Ooh. So please comment below and let me know if there's a lure that does really well for you during this kind of summer to fall transition, early fall. If there's a certain lure that really stands out for you and does really well, comment below. I love hearing what you all have to say. Now tonight's Subscribe Fishing Friends shout out goes to my guys, Zach and Andrew. You saw me sporting the shirt. I appreciate you guys. The guys over at Looking for Fish have been friends of mine, have supported me since very, very early on in the journey. I appreciate you two gentlemen a lot. They just released some of their own clothing stuff. I'll link their Instagram down below so you can go over and check it out. T-shirts, hooded sweatshirts, some cool designs, a couple absolutely great guys. So supporting them, I'm always proud to promote those guys. And a huge thank you to everybody else who watches and supports. I am blown away. I'm creeping up on 100,000 subscribed Fishing Friends. Never thought that would be possible. To be honest, 10,000 was always my goal, like within the first 3-4 years maybe, to hit 10,000. Blew that out of the water, and that's all because of awesome folks like you. So thank you all so much for the support. It means a lot. But That's it. It's late. I need to edit. I'm behind on all these types of videos. Some more gear reviews coming up, more tackle talks like this. If there's something specific you want to see, comment below and let me know. But enough from me. Thank you all for watching. Until next time.